The sky over the azure abyss was a canvas of chaos. Streaks of white contrails crisscrossed the deep blue, the roar of jet engines a constant deafening thunder. From the ground it looked like an airshow gone horribly wrong. In the cockpit of Falcon 1 I saw it for what it was, a slaughter. My wingman Jake screamed through the comms, his voice a ragged edge of panic. "They're everywhere! I can't get a lock! It's our own guys!" He was right. My radar was a mess of green icons, friendly IFF tags blinking back at me from every direction. But friendlies don't fire on friendlies. They don't turn your squadron into a fiery confetti storm against the clouds. The comms channel was a cacophony of confusion and terror. Break left, you're on my 6, followed by the gut-wrenching sound of an explosion, then static. A pilot from another squadron sobbed openly. I just saw Eagle 3 get torn apart by IA Goal 5. What is happening? It was a maelstrom of betrayal and death. Jets with our markings, our call signs were hunting us. They moved with a vicious precision we couldn't match. Every pilot was second-guessing their shots, hesitating for that fatal split second, terrified of committing the ultimate sin of friendly fire. But our enemies had no such hesitation. They were ghosts in our own machines, turning our greatest strength, our unity, into our most devastating weakness. My own hands were slick with sweat on the flight stick. I dodged a missile that came from a jet bearing the insignia of my own squadron, the Howling Banshees. The pilot, or whatever was in that cockpit, flew with a reckless abandon that sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't combat. It was a massacre orchestrated by phantoms. We were fighting ourselves, and we were losing badly. The tactical display showed our numbers dwindling at an alarming rate. For every phantom we hesitated to shoot, we lost one of our own. The deception was perfect, a masterpiece of psychological warfare that was tearing us apart from the inside out. We were trapped in a mirror, and the reflection was killing us. Then, amidst the swirling dance of death, I saw it. It was a flicker, a subtle wrongness that most would miss in the heat of battle. A group of 4 friendly jets executed a simultaneous 90-degree turn at supersonic speeds. My stomach lurched just watching it. No human pilot could survive that. The G-forces would turn a person into a red smear on their seat. Flesh and bone have limits. An experienced pilot might pull 9, maybe 10 Gs for a few seconds and risk blacking out. What I just saw was closer to 50. It was physically impossible. These weren't pilots pushing the limits of their aircraft. It was something else entirely. Something that didn't have to worry about the frailties of the human body. A cold clarity washed over me, cutting through the panic. These things, whatever they were mimics. They had our tech, our call signs, but they didn't have our limitations. They were perfect copies on the outside, but inside, they were alien. I zoomed my display onto another suspect, one that had just taken down 2 of our fighters with impossible speed. It pulled into a climb so steep it should have stalled, then flipped end over end, reversing direction instantly. It was like watching a hummingbird made of steel and fire. It was beautiful and it was terrifying. It didn't fly like a plane, it moved like a thought, unbound by the laws of aerodynamics that governed our every move. This was our only edge. We were faster, more agile, but their perfection was a tell. They couldn't replicate our flaws, our humanity, our physical boundaries. I keyed my comms, cutting through the noise with a command I hoped everyone would hear. All pilots, this is Falcon 1 lead Leo. Listen up. Disregard IFF tags. Repeat, disregard all IFF tags. The enemy are mimics. Look for impossible maneuvers. Anything that defies physics, anything a human pilot couldn't survive. Those are your targets. Trust your gut, not your gear. A moment of silence followed, then a hesitant voice. Leo, are you sure? Positive? I snapped back. They're inhumanly perfect. Use it against them. The chaos began to shift, the confusion slowly replaced by a dawning, terrible understanding. We finally knew what we were fighting. All right, Banshees. Form on me, I commanded. My voice steady now, filled with a newfound purpose. We're going ghost hunting. The remaining pilots in my squadron, a battered but resolute handful, acknowledged. We're hunting the impossible. Ignore the dogfights. We're looking for the acrobats, the ones that move too well. We hit them fast, we hit them hard, and we get out. The strategy was risky. It meant ignoring immediate threats from other mimics to focus on the ones that gave themselves away. We had to stop fighting shadows and start targeting the puppeteers. We dove back into the fray, but this time with new eyes. We were no longer looking for enemies. We were looking for gods. I saw one, a mimic F-22, corkscrewing through a barrage of missile fire that should have shredded it, its movements too fluid, too perfect. Target 3 o'clock low, performing an impossible evasion. I called out, "I'm on it. Cover me." I pushed my own jet to its breaking point, the frame groaning under the strain. The mimic noticed my approach and pulled a maneuver that would have ripped the wings off my plane dead stop in midair, followed by an immediate acceleration in the opposite direction. But I was ready for it. I didn't try to follow its impossible path. I anticipated its destination. I fired a volley of missiles not at where it was, but where it was going to be. The sky lit up as my missiles found their mark. For the first time, one of the phantoms exploded into a shower of metallic confetti that was distinctly not from one of our jets. A cheer erupted over the coms. It was a small victory, but it was everything. It was proof. Hope, a fragile and precious thing, began to bloom in the heart of the chaos. "He's right. They're not us," someone shouted. "Watch for the show-offs." The tide began to turn. Pilots stopped hesitating. The chaotic free-for-all sharpened into a focused hunt. We became a scalpel, cutting through the confusion to excise the tumors. My squadron moved as one, a spearhead of vengeful pilots. We pointed out the impossibilities to each other, a litany of broken physics. Target at 9 o'clock, just reversed without turning. Got him. 2 o'clock high, just did a Cobra maneuver at Mach 2, engaging. We were a symphony of calculated violence, weaving through the remaining chaos, ignoring the mimics that flew like normal pilots and surgically removing the ones that didn't. Each time one of the acrobatic fakes exploded, the pressure lessened. The battlefield grew quieter, the number of hostile contacts dwindling. We were still taking losses, but now we were fighting back. We were no longer victims of a perfect deception. We were predators hunting an alien perfection. We pushed them, forcing them to use their inhuman agility, and each time they did, they signed their own death warrant. The sky, once thick with enemies, began to clear. The desperate ballet of death was nearing its finale. Slowly, silence reclaimed the sky. The deafening roar of 100 engines faded to the hum of the few that remained. The coms, once a storm of panic, were now filled with quiet, shaky breaths of relief. We had won. The cost was staggering. The azure abyss below would be a graveyard of heroes and phantoms alike. But we had survived. We had faced an enemy that wore our own face and had unmasked it. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple, I gave the order for the remaining fighters to return to base. They limped back, battered and broken, but victorious. I stayed behind for a moment, flying solo, a lone sentinel against the dying light. I needed a moment to process, to breathe. The vast, empty sky was a stark contrast to the hell we had just endured. I flew towards the sunset, the quiet hum of my engine a soothing balm. It was over. As I watched the fiery orb of the sun dip below the horizon, a sense of peace settled over me. Then, a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision. My head snapped to the side. There, flying in perfect formation with me, was another jet. It was an exact copy of my own, right down to the Falcon one painted on the tail. It hadn't been on my radar. It hadn't made a sound. It was just there. My blood ran cold. The cockpit of the other jet was dark, its canopy reflecting the sunset like a black, unblinking eye. I banked left, a perfect mirror image of my movement. I rolled. It rolled, its wings aligning with mine with impossible precision. I pushed my throttle forward, accelerating. It matched my speed instantly, effortlessly. There was no hesitation, no slight delay of a human pilot reacting. It was simply a part of my own motion, an inescapable shadow. It wasn't flying with me, it was mirroring me. My heart hammered against my ribs. The battle wasn't over. The deception hadn't ended. I was alone, miles from any support, with a perfect copy of myself flying silently beside me. And as I stared into that dark, reflective canopy, I had the chilling realization that this time, the mimic wasn't just copying a jet.